Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, your guest co-host, Nick Kalikas. Today, we're going to talk about UFC Nashville, Cory Sandhagen versus Rob Font. And Nick, it's going down this Saturday night live at the Bridgestone Arena in Nashville, Tennessee. You got two top five bantamweights going head-to-head. And Cory Sandhagen, this wasn't his original opponent. Initially, they put him in there with the Russian stud, Umar, and I mean, for a replacement, Rob Font, that's not an easy out for anybody. So, man, what a main event. And it's actually not in the bantamweight division. It's a catchweight at 140, got it. Rob Font is a big bantamweight, so you got to give him a little leeway, but we'll view this as a bantamweight fight, and what a main event it is, Nick.
Oh, I love it. Like you said, I mean, for a replacement fight at this caliber to get put together so quickly, I don't think the fans are going to be disappointed. I mean, of course, a lot of us wanted to see him against Nurmagomedov, but at the same time, it is what it is. Well, I'm sure we'll get to see that at some time down the road.
I mean, it would have pissed me off if they did like Cory versus like some newcomer, like a LFA dude on a 1 week notice. I'd been like, come on, like stop it. And could you imagine if that guy upset Cory, but just saying, this is a very suitable replacement. So, Nick, without further ado, let's get right down to business, because in the main event, we got an 140-pound catchweight bout between two top bantamweight contenders. We got Cory Sandhagen, he's 16-4, taking on Rob Font, or as we like to say in Brazil, Nick, Hobby Fonch, who's 20-6. And currently, they got it Cory Sandhagen minus 340. The comeback on Rob Font is plus 280. So you already know where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with the line. I mean, look, it opened minus 200 Sandhagen. If you jumped on that, I mean, great job. But here at minus 340, I'm not sure what to do with it. And, we can break down the stylistics, and we will. But as gamblers, the number is the most important thing. I mean, do you view there to be value at minus 340? I think it's kind of escaped us a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. No, I mean, at this point, it's unfortunately one of those things that you have to look at the dog or you leave it alone. I mean, and Font is such a good caliber, high caliber fighter that we, sometimes you count him out. Look at his last fight, pulled a big upset win. So, I mean, he is that type of guy that can play spoiler. So at a minus 300 or above price tag, you can't lay the chalk on this fight. You have to kind of sit back and watch it or bet the dog. So, but there has been a lot of sharp action that did lay 250s, 270s, all the way up to 300, even around that range. So sharp action is coming in on Sandhagen.
And I believe you, and I can see why. Because, I mean, think about this. Cory is a guy that ever since he made his UFC debut against Austin Arnett, do you remember that performance when he was just destroying the guy with body shots? We were like, whoa, who's this guy? You know what I mean? Like, and then the Yuri Alcantara fight overcomes insane adversity, finishes him. And Yuri at the time was one of the most dangerous Brazilian finishers. And then Mario Bautista finishes him in round one. Look what Mario Bautista is doing now. He's got a pay-per-view main card slot against a former champion, Cody Garbrandt, that they're building this kid up. Then this kid Sandhagen goes toe-to-toe with John Lineker for 3 straight rounds, which one doesn't simply do. Then they give him the vet of vets, Rafael Assunção, and guess what's next? The current champ, Aljamain Sterling, who wasn't the champ at the time. It was a number 1 contender fight. But listen, Aljo did his thing, won back take. The fight was shortly after. And I mean, ever since then, I say ever since then, since day one, Cory has been fighting a killer's row, man. After that, it's Marlon Moraes, who at the time was one of the scariest knockout artists in the history of the sport. Frankie Edgar, Hall of Famer. TJ Dillashaw, Hall of Famer. Piotr Yan. At the time, Piotr Yan was untouchable. I mean, he was coming off the Aljo fight where he knocked him out with a knee, but they raised Aljo's hand. Peter Yan, as far as everyone was concerned, was the boogeyman of the division at the time. Then he takes, this is the interesting part, because I was thinking that Cory Sandhagen was a guy that, maybe he kind of chokes in big fights. He's super talented, this and that, kind of like, not to disrespect any legends, but you remember how Kenny Florian would literally beat everybody until he got to those, whether it was a gray man or title eliminator or the title shots themselves. And then Dana said he kind of chokes in big fights. And I was kind of getting that vibe from Sandhagen, but check this out. So Sandhagen fought Piotr Yan October of 2021, right? He doesn't come back until September of 2022. So he literally takes close to a year off from competition, comes back against Song Yadong, a guy who's getting better every single fight. And he had to overcome early adversity in that fight. And the cut he left on him, and I bet Song in that fight, I think it was like plus 180. I just felt like at plus 180, I'll take him against any bantamweight on planet Earth, right? That kind of thing. That comeback by Sandhagen, like, normally you're like, oh, I'd like to see it play out, cut, stoppage, this and that. Nah, dog. Like, he fucking came back and put it on him in those later rounds. And then against Vera, I bet Vera there at plus 160 or something like that, because my whole thing with Vera is like, you know, we're going to lose the first round or two, and then he's like the best fighter in the world in round 3 every single fight. I don't know what it is. That's just how he fights. And, you know, on paper, if you never watched that fight, right, and I told you I bet a plus 160 on a split decision, you'd say, oh, Dan, you made a great bet. Go make that bet 100 more times. You're going to come out on the right side of the coin. But, Nick, that fight was not a split decision in any way, shape, or form. That was, you know, classic Texas judges doing their thing, because that to me was 50-45, possibly 50-44. And that was the fight where, you know, because since day one, people have been saying Cory could possibly be a future world champion. But that performance he had against Vera, you don't just shut down Vera like that. Guys will win rounds off Vera, and then Vera's going to take you out after that. Vera was never in that fight for 1 second. I mean, he got outstruck by more than 2-1. Cory, in addition to landing 128 significant strikes that they counted, I feel like the counters don't always catch everything. They counted only 128 significant strikes, and he also hit 3 takedowns, which is something he's been adding to his game. You saw that in the Song Yadong fight. Now he's able to give you that element of surprise. Even if this guy isn't a credentialed wrestler, just the fact that he's feinting those takedowns, giving you different looks, giving you different things to think about. It's not just the volume striking. It's not just the length anymore. Now you got to worry about this guy potentially shooting on you. And now I think we're finally starting to see that guy that people were saying, hey, this could be a future world champion. Now I'm starting to buy it, Nick. Now I think he can fight for a title and have success down the line.
Absolutely, man. He's so well-rounded, like you said. I mean, underrated in those aspects. Don't forget, he's got good subs, and with those long limbs too. I mean, there's just sky's the limit for him, and he's kind of climbing that ladder really well. And I think he's one of the toughest matchups just for everybody across the board in the division, because he can do anything. He can stuff the takedowns. He can wrestle you offensively. Like you said, he can pick you apart on the feet. And that's the thing here against Rob Font. I do think that it's kind of going to be narrative a little bit. As the fight progresses, Font's going to hang in there and do pretty well, but I think he will start getting beat and picked apart as the fight goes on a little bit with Sandhagen. I mean, that's, you know, kind of the narrative situation Font's been in as of late, and I think it's going to happen to him again here in this spot, maybe even get finished as it goes. So, yeah, I love me some Sandhagen. I mean, he's just an exciting fighter to watch, and I hope he does get that, you know, title shot or eventually wear that strap, because he deserves it, man. There's no question. He's trending in the right direction.
Yeah, the things we love about Font, firstly, that jab's got to be one of the best jabs in the bantamweight division, and maybe in the whole UFC. I mean, this guy's straight punches. If you want a pocket box with Rob Font, if Cory says, fuck using my length and my footwork and, you know, giving him elements of surprise with feints to takedowns, and he just wants to box in the pocket with Rob Font, well, then these odds are completely off. But knowing the kind of IQ and the way that Cory thinks, I highly doubt that's going to be the case here. But just saying, Rob does have a path to victory. Like I said, go stand toe-to-toe in the pocket with Rob Font and see what happens. You know, ask Adrian Yanez about that. And what's amazing about that fight, and I was on Yanez in that fight, but I was also on Cheeto and on Aldo prior to that, because I kind of think that Rob can still give it. And it's not that Rob can necessarily not take it, because it's not like when he gets knocked down, he's looking for a way out. The guy's still tough as hell, and he's still trying to get back in there. It's just his body's kind of letting him down at times is the issue I'm having. But back to the Yanez fight, I wanted to make an example. If you play that knockout in slow motion, Adrian Yanez was mid-combo. Adrian Yanez rocked Rob Font with a big shot kind of around the ear, temple area. And Rob Font, like in the midst of getting attacked with a big combo that's put down many other people, you saw what Yanez was doing up until that fight. Rob Font, I mean, it's literally, he dug that shot from the depths of hell and just brought it up. And man, he sent Yanez flying. And it was like, okay, y'all must have forgot. He's still got it. So he's earned this opportunity. I just think the smarts of Cory Sandhagen, the length, and I say the length, Font's actually got a 1-inch reach advantage, but I think the height of Cory Sandhagen is going to play a factor because he uses that height. It's not like, I remember last time you were on the show, there was this kid named Sam Patterson making his debut against Yanal Ashmouz, right? And we were talking about how, you know, Sam is a brutal knockout waiting to happen. We just don't really think it's going to be this fight, and then it was this fight, right?
Yep.
The thing with Sandhagen is that I don't see the tall man's defense as much as I did early in his career, right? And with that said, his chin's insane. He was eating Lineker bombs on his chin like nothing. I was like, damn. So the kid's ultra durable. And now he's evolving into that guy that people have been hyping up for years. So I'm sold. I think the kid's paid his dues. Like kid, you crushed the grapes. Now we drink the wine. So I think Cory Sandhagen is going to shine in the main event.
Yeah, no, I like it, man. And I'm glad you brought up the fight IQ too, because I think that's very important. He is that type of fighter that he's not going to stand in the pocket. He's not going to do silly things. He knows what it takes to win the fight, and he's going to adapt as the fight goes on and make those changes and to be successful. Because a lot of times, man, it's so frustrating. You see the fighters go out there and not kind of utilize their strengths, or, you know, the fight IQ is questionable at times, but you don't have to worry about that with Sandhagen either. He's well coached. He's well trained. Everything across the board is just lining up perfectly for him.
Co-main event of the evening in the strawweight division. This is strawweight, right? Like Tatiana dropped the strawweight. Why did I think she was at flyweight?
This, I believe so. Yeah, I think it is back at strawweight. It's 100. No, it's a 115-pound fight.
Yeah,
correct. So it is a strawweight. Yep.
Wow. Okay. So against Montana. Okay. So Montana was flyweight. Wow. So she's dropping. Interesting, because I saw Tatiana in Atlanta at the PFL fights, and I mean, she looked in shape, but she don't look like no strawweight. She's a big girl. So
yeah, she is a big girl. It's surprising, honestly, a little bit, but
yeah.
I mean, Andrade going back down doesn't surprise me, you know, either after her, you know, lack of success or whatnot recently. So it's a good fight, though, man. A lot of action coming in early on the underdog, of course, and now we're seeing some action back on Tatiana Suarez too.
So I got a couple things to say, but firstly, let's just get this out the way. Jessica Andrade, she's 24-11, taking on Tatiana Suarez, who's 9-0. Currently, they got it. Tatiana, just depends where you look, minus 360, the comeback on Jessica Andrade, plus 295, plus 300-ish. All right, two things I want to say. Number one, Nick, do you know what's been my most profitable betting angle in 2023?
No, sir. What's that?
Fading Jessica Andrade.
That's usually not a formula for success, but can't argue it. Go ahead.
3 units, Blanchfield, plus 160.
I was also Blanchfield.
3 units, Yan Xiaonan, plus 160.
I was also her as well.
So
I'm not automatically trying to fade just those spots. Either were you, obviously. You're not, but yeah, no, I got you.
Well, with Xiaonan, I was, because Xiaonan, I bet her every single fight. She's one of my money trains, but Blanchfield was more the spot the number. I mean, they're all the spot the number. If Xiaonan was minus 500, I wouldn't have bet her there, right? But here, minus 360, that's not plus 160. However, I think she's catching her at a good time. But before I break it down, I want to give a shout out to someone. So there's a new teammate that joined my team. Her name's Tyra Parker. And check this out. Check out how much of a badass Tyra Parker is. So she's only been on our team, give or take, about a month or so. And she's like very soft spoken. So I didn't know any of this. It's just when we're in the locker room, you know, the guys talk, just like I'm sure the ladies talk when they're in the locker room. And one of the guys brought up how like our teammate Tyra fought Tatiana Suarez to a decision in the regionals. Her second pro fight was against Michelle the Karate Hottie Watterson, and then she also fought Nina Nunes on her regionals. And Tyra never had an amateur background, so she just goes right into pros, fighting Tatiana to a decision, Karate Hottie in Strikeforce, and Nina Ansaroff. And unfortunately, she got discouraged by those losses and retired early. But I'm thinking to myself, like, all these fighters went on to be ranked fighters, like, just like stick through it, like, and they all had amateur backgrounds too. You didn't. Like, you're a badass, you know? So shout out Tyra Parker. That's really cool. She's a really respectful, soft-spoken person. She never mentioned it once. I had to find out from someone else. So, you know, much respect, Tyra Parker. But back to this. I had to bring it up because Tatiana's fighting, and I just found out about it. But I'll be honest with you, man. I've always thought that Tatiana, you know, has a skill set that's going to give, you know, people a ton of problems. I mean, her physicality mixed with her wrestling, you know about that. But a lot of people were a lot higher on her than I've been, right? Like a lot of people were saying future world champ since day one. And I'm not disputing that might be the case. Who knows? We'll see. But I was never on that train. I was never the one saying, I've been the one saying Yan Xiaonan champion since day one. I've been the guy saying Jamal Hill champion since day one. But I was never on the Tatiana champion train. I've always been on the, she's a top 10 fighter, but that doesn't matter here. I'm just bringing that up because I know, because you've heard the way people will get when they talk about Tatiana, right? Like
yeah. I mean, these wrestlers, we want to fall in love with them all because they're just such high caliber athletes and they're so dominant. When they cross over to MMA, a lot of times you expect, the best from them. So in this situation here, especially for the ladies divisions, yeah, she was just a phenom and the expectations are so high. You're right. Across the board, everybody really believes that she will be champion one day. Unfortunately, the injuries, everything, set her back a little bit. But she might have already been wearing that strap. We don't know. But you're right. High expectations to live up to all that, man, it's hard. So this is a good test, though. We're really going to see what she's made of here.
And another interesting thing is her dropping back down to strawweight. She has a win over the current flyweight champ, Grasso. Like, why not stay at flyweight and chase that rematch? I guess she's going to be so physically superior at strawweight that maybe she sees that as her best path to a title. But at the same time, you beat the flyweight champ. So, like, why not stay there? But back to this matchup, man. I mean, like, look, we know what Andrade brings to the table. And the thing about someone like Andrade, it kind of brings me back to a little bit of Tony Ferguson, or even like in just a situation where, like, I don't think that Andrade's skills have diminished. I still think that, like, if you're not fighting back, she's going to swing big bombs on you. She's got a nasty guillotine. Bata Estaca. Does that mean pile driver? I forgot what it means, but she's been known to pick girls up, Matt Hughes style, walk them across the cage, slam them down. She's a physical force. It's just that she's always been known for eating a lot of shots, right? Like, it's just that she'd walk through those shots, and then when she landed her shots, the ladies had never been hit like that before. So it'd be like, oh my God, like what did I just get hit with, right? But now that the durability is kind of starting to wane a little bit for Andrade, she still fights the same. She just can't take it as well as she once did. And I'm not even talking about Yan Xiaonan knocking her out in the first round, because Yan Xiaonan is one of the most dangerous strikers in that division. But Erin Blanchfield, who's like a prodigy black belt, like one of those kid prodigies. Like, I think she was like a black belt, like 19 or something crazy like that. But like, Erin Blanchfield was getting off on like straight punches on Andrade. Erin Blanchfield was getting off on the feet. So that's kind of worrisome about the current state of Andrade. I know Andrade can still give it, of course. I know that damn well, and so do you. I just don't think she can take it as well. But to take it a step further, matchup wise, we saw Valentina take down Andrade 7 times. Now, granted, that means she got up 6 times, but still, if someone can relentlessly wrestle here, it's Tatiana. So yeah, if Tatiana maybe takes her down and takes her back, and somehow Jessica can survive and get back up, and then it's a restart. Yeah, those kind of things are sweats, especially when you're laying -3 to -4 and whatnot. But ultimately, I do think that Tatiana is going to get that final takedown where Jessica can't get up, and whether it's ground and pound, whether it's a take the back and a rear naked choke, because Andrade does give up the back to get back up to your feet. Now, granted, that strategy works with a lot of fighters, because sometimes you got to take that risk to get back up. But here against Suarez is someone that you give her an inch, she'll take a mile. So yeah, I do have Suarez in this fight.
Yeah, I do too. There's no question about it. And it is the ground deficiency that we're seeing from Andrade. That's a problem. Her submission defense, offensively, she's good. Like, she can actually out-wrestle most too. I think, like you said, the explosiveness, the power that she has, and she still has, that in her punches too on the feet. So she's very dangerous, has this offensive submission ability too. Just the defensive ability, stuff in the takedowns. I think she's going to be game at the beginning, but all it's going to take is maybe 1 or 2 takedowns. Suarez is going to do her thing and probably finish her. So I do think this is a test because of the high caliber position that Andrade is in, but stylistically should be a nightmare matchup. That's why you're seeing the line so high. I get it. I want to see her get tested. I want to see all these prospects get tested. So I'm hoping Andrade stuffs some takedowns. I'm hoping she lands some punches. I'm hoping Suarez is able to absorb that punishment. I want to see her kind of overcome adversity and then just get the finish after that. You know what I mean? Just kind of get tested like that. I'm sure she doesn't, obviously, but We want to see that. I want to see her get stretched out like as far as we can into the third round, all that stuff, because I do have some questions about her cardio. We just haven't seen enough of Suarez, and especially with the layoff, everything coming into play here with the injury. I want to see her back to her prime or the best of her ability to kind of see where she's at.
Absolutely. And I mean, it'd be cool to see it here. Just not projecting it, but it'd be cool. I'd be happy for her, of course.
Yeah, I don't, like I said, I don't think it's going to play out that way, but if it does, I won't be disappointed for sure, because we do. And I hope she gets the W, obviously, because it's fresh blood. So, I'm hoping for an all-time classic type of battle that we're a little surprised about, but she still gets the W. It still moves up that ladder, So that's, I think, the best case scenario. Probably doesn't happen that way. She gets a takedown, ends it maybe in the first, but we'll see.
And let's see which way this line trends as well. Do you have any indications of more sharp action coming in either way?
Well, again, it got pounded at the beginning down. Now it's starting to get, bounce back up a little bit. Sharps aren't hesitating. That's the thing. A lot of these bigger groups that have the bankrolls, well, they'll lay 3-1. They'll lay, those high prices if they find value there. And this is a spot where a lot of them do find value. So, yeah, it's trending up a little bit for Suarez. And I'm sure the props are going to be buried at the most books, like with submission, TKO on the ground, inside the distance, stuff like that as well. So, yeah, this is just a spot where parlays, the books are definitely going to be pulling for Andrade when it's all said and done. No question about it.
Now, featured bout in the light heavyweight division, we got Dustin Jacoby. He's 18-7-1, taking on Kennedy and Nzechukwu, who's 12-3. And currently, Nick, they got it. Kennedy and Nzechukwu -155. The comeback on Dustin Jacoby is +135. This is a really interesting fight for a lot of reasons, right? Because it's like, I think that, all right, so tell me your opinion on this, because Dustin Jacoby, he got signed to the UFC for the second time. This is second UFC stint for those that don't know. I think he was about 33 years old, which is young. 33, there's nothing old about that. It's just I'm saying these years fly by, and before you realize that you're 35, 36, are we kind of past the prime of Jacoby? And the reason that this needs to be addressed, Nick, is because I think a prime Jacoby gives Kennedy a lot of problems.
Oh, it gives him a lot of problems. I think he'd win this fight still, to be honest with you, just the way they match up. Again, this is just one of those fights where Kennedy's evolving. He's getting better, but I do think Dustin will probably keep this on the feet, leave a little bit of space, and he's the better striker. So even though Kennedy is dangerous, I mean, I think we've seen him vulnerable at times. Again, he's been on a little roll for sure. We've seen now Jacoby lose a couple fights, but styles make fights, and this is a different type of matchup. So for me personally, I think you got to look at Jacoby, and I was one that actually bet against him the last couple fights. So, but now it's time to get back on his wagon the way they match up, I think. And again, I'm the one that kind of has been backing Kennedy his last few fights too. But I just think the interesting clash here of styles that Jacoby could be live. I don't think you could lay the chalk in this spot here. I think you have to look at Jacoby or leave it alone.
Yeah, I mean, the things going in Kennedy's favor, firstly, those physical attributes, man. I mean, we're dealing with a guy with a 7-inch reach advantage. He's a southpaw. I mean, he's Nigerian. You already know the deal, man. And he's got a knack for the comeback. It's just how long can you do that for, right? And also, it was a big red flag how Devin Clark was rocking him like that. Look, if Devin Clark just pinned him up against the fence, killed some clock, okay, whatever, that's what he does. But Devin Clark almost had him out of there at one point. I was like, oh my God. And then beautiful ninja choke. Check out my technique of the week on that. But look, all that aside, it's about, is Kennedy finally gonna get past that? You know how like Donald Cerrone would always have those slow starts, like where he'd have to get rocked before he gets going. I feel like Kennedy's got a similar thing here, man. It's like, I don't know what it is, but in that first round, whether it was the Cutelaba fight and the Devin Clark fight most recently, or, going back to Carlos Ulberg beating his ass, and that was a great comeback. Still the only guy to beat Carlos Ulberg. The Danilo Marquez fight had come back. Dawoon Jung got him out of there right away. The Nicolau fight, I know a lot of us thought maybe the decision was questionable, but it was still a close up in the air kind of fight. So it's tough to say, because like, I do think Kennedy's making improvements. I think he's feeling more comfortable in there. And I think that he's got all the physical attributes, and now the skills starting to catch up. I'm just worried, possibly about the durability. And Dustin Jacoby's a real striker. I mean, we're talking about a guy who was in there with, the Alex Pereiras in glory, no brutal ass knockout, but still, you're fighting guys of that caliber in glory, right? And then he's been able to transition to the UFC for a second time, but this time he's made a serious account of himself. This time, the guy's been on a run, right? And these last 2 losses, I wouldn't take much away from them. I mean, I thought he performed well in the Khalil fight and the Azamat fight. Look, Azamat's a problem. let's
100%.
not beat around the bush. Azamat's a serious problem, but Kennedy's a problem too. It's just, man, I'm just kind of struggling. Back to my point about, is Dustin Jacoby kind of, middling out a little bit? Like, have we kind of seen the peak of his skills where, he's kind of reached the top of the mountain and now there's nowhere to go but down? Not saying he's on some crazy decline at all. Just saying, like, maybe a tad bit slower than he was. Maybe can't take a shot as well as he once could. Those are the kind of things I'm concerned about, because there's one thing about Kennedy. If he can survive your early storm, I mean, he's hell on wheels in that second and third round. That's just how it's been throughout his career. So this is the hardest one for me to call, because 2 years ago I'm picking Dustin Jacoby here, especially at that price. No questions asked. It's just, are we still getting that fully motivated, at the top of his game, or are we kind of at the point now where, because he, like I said, he got signed when he was 33, which is young, but 35 and 36 comes very fast, right? So, I mean, what are we expecting from Jacoby here, in your opinion?
I think he'll steady the ship. I mean, it's not going to be an easy fight for sure. I mean, it's going to be, if it hits scorecards, I wouldn't be surprised if it's another split decision type of fight, but in a situation like that, like I said, I think he should be able to outstrike Kennedy in this spot, maybe even hurt him enough that it doesn't go to the cards, obviously, or like you said, the defensive issues that Kennedy has on the other side of it. I think Jacoby's durability is still there. And I just don't think that Kennedy is going to be trying to implement that grinding style. Maybe there'll be some cage work for sure with both guys, some reversals. But I still think we'll see this play out in space enough for Jacoby is going to get his time to shine here. So I think he's got enough left in the tank. You're right, though. You never know, man. When these guys start 35, 36, you start slowing down a little bit. He's definitely not going to, peak more. If anything, he's going to start slowing down here soon. But I still think he's got enough left in the tank that it's a coin flip type of fight. So it's a dog or pass situation, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not laying minus 150 something on Kennedy in this spot, especially when a lot of his wins are predicated on comebacks and stuff like that, which, I love my comeback guys, but I like comeback guys at dog odds, right?
Yeah.
Like a bet I lost last week on Vinicius Salvador against CJ Vergara.
Yeah.
Honestly, man, I'd make that bet again at plus 150. Like, I felt like it was like a 50-50 fight. Like, round 1, clear Salvador. Round 3, clear Vergara. Round 2, 50-50. Like, just keep giving me those kind of spots, but at plus 150 odds, and I'm cool with it, right? But here, minus 150, I don't want a comeback at a price like that. Like, for example, when Kennedy fought Olberg, I think he was, plus 270, plus 230, something crazy. Okay, I'll take a comeback at those odds all day. I just don't want to have to pay up for the comeback. I'm gonna lean Kennedy, but it's a tough fight. I know that Jacoby. Yeah. I mean, one way to beat a taller guy, that, the calf kicks. I mean, this guy's got a good kicking game. When he's not injured, he didn't kick against McCall, but when his shit's together, this guy's got a very good kicking game, opportunistic upstairs as well. I could see a knockout. I'm just worried about what happens if Kennedy can not necessarily weather a storm, but get his timing down. And then when it's his turn to deliver his strikes, I'm curious how Dustin reacts to that. So I'm not sure. And usually when I'm not sure, it's a dog or pass situation. And I'll agree with you that it's dog or pass. I'll just pure pick the other side that you're taking. So I'll take Kennedy.
I like it.
Next up in the featherweight division, we got Gavin Governor Tucker. He's 13-2, taking on Diego Lopes, who's 21-6. And currently they got it. Diego Lopes minus 180, Nick. The comeback on Gavin Tucker plus 155. Did not expect that. So before we talk about the matchup, true or false, Gavin Tucker's 37 years old?
I would say true.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, these guys don't, like, none of these guys look their age. They're always in better shape. They're always like, it's phenomenal. So yeah. It's amazing that he's even up there, because you would think, dude, he could pass for 29, 27, you know what I mean? 27 years old, 29 years old, something like that. So yeah, it is surprising.
I mean, like, when he made his UFC debut against Sam Sicilia in 2017, like, this looked like the next big Canadian prospect, man. I mean, the footwork, the volume, black belt in jiu-jitsu. I was like, okay, like who's this guy? And then the Ricky Glenn fight happened, a beatdown of all beatdowns. And check this out. There's been a consistent theme. Takes 2 years off after that beatdown. I'm thinking, oh man, he's never going to come back the same. So I bet Sung Woo Choi dog odds there. And yeah, there were a couple questionable moments from Gavin, but man, Gavin, like when Gavin's not getting like, when Gavin doesn't take a shot that severely compromises him or something that's going to change the tide of the fight, he's pretty damn good. Like he's got a very good process. He's got a good point fighting ability. He can mix in takedowns. Black belt in jiu-jitsu. So I like everything about him offensively. It's just that defensively is where I draw the line, right? Like when it comes time for him, he can give it. I just don't think he can take it as well. And even in some fights that he's won, correct me if I'm wrong, I gotta double check this. It's been a while. Justin James dropped him in the first round as well. He was able to overcome that. And then check it out. So after the James fight, I was thinking, okay, well, there's no way that Billy Q is gonna lose to this guy. And man, listen to this. Gavin Tucker puts up over 100 significant strikes, 7 takedowns, looks like a contender. We're like, all right. And then he gets a Dan Ige fight, which is like, the next logical step. You just beat Billy Q. You're on this 3-fight win streak. Let's see what you do here. And then he gets smoked again. And now we're right back at where we were from the Rick Glenn fight. So now we're coming off another 2-year layoff. So the last time he did that, he came out there and he went on a big win streak. What do we expect here? Because now the guy's 37 years old, which is a little bit different, right? And then with this kid, Diego, so here's the deal with Diego. It's like, he's not the kind of guy I want to back at chalk, because back to like comebacks or like opportunistic finishes, I like those guys at dog odds, because like Diego is not a guy who's going to be picking you apart, who's going to be landing volume, jabs, calf kicks, take down a seal off the round. That's not how he fights. The way Diego fights is he's going to swing some bombs, but then there's going to be a lot of low output. You take him down, but then there's going to be near submission attempts, right? Like against Evloev, that knee bar, that Kimura, that arm bar, like that stuff was disgusting. But in all the and he actually rocked Movsar a couple times on the feet too. But in all the in between, there's lots of minutes that pass by with inactivity, and that's where a guy like Gavin Tucker is going to point him up. It's just when Diego does have his moments, how bad are they going to impact Gavin Tucker? And that's kind of where, my dilemma mentally is going on here.
I agree with you completely. And it's tough because there's a lot of hype now on the Lopes side because of this performance. He took that fight on short notice. He came in and overperformed out of his mind. And people realize, holy cow, this guy's good. And he is good. And he's the type of fighter that continues to improve every time you see him too. And again, he's a finisher. He's got the good jiu-jitsu game. He's working on that takedown defense. He's stepping up his game. And he's one of these guys, I think, that finally makes the UFC and starts really taking everything to another level. So that's the upside of Lopes. Where you said Tucker, though, man, the other side of it, you have seen glimpses from Tucker as far as being a potential contender. I mean, that's how good this guy can be offensively at times when he puts everything together well, because he can put you on your back. He can out-wrestle you. He can out-strike you on the feet. He's just one of those guys, but the durability is an issue. I bet Ige against him. Obviously, I was pretty pleased with the result that it happened that quick, because if that fight would have played out, you know what I mean? He would have had his moments in that fight, and I was expecting it to be pretty close. So with that said, I just can't trust Tucker on this spot. So for me, I don't want to really, unless the price continues to climb, I don't really want to put my money on this fight, because I can't. You're right. I can't lay Lopes here either, because honestly, again, that performance that he's coming off of elevated this line a little bit. Like a lot of people, there's hype, there's recency bias, all that stuff we like to say is kind of factored in here a little bit. Because if it's kind of neutral, I mean, this is going to be a really good fight. If Lopes does not get him out of there, he's probably going to lose on the scorecards, I would think, right? So he's not going to win decision here. So I think you look at the Lopes props and maybe, find an angle there if you're going to bet this fight, but don't lay the chalk. And a lot of people have laid the chalk. I'm not saying you're wrong, especially at the low numbers. If you beat the line, because it is kind of steeping up and you made a good bet, okay. But at this price now, I would probably hesitate and stay away from it. I'm going to myself, because again, there's just too many factors here, and Lopes is getting maybe a little bit too much respect. Now, he comes in here, he finishes this fight, he's going to keep on climbing and elevating his game for sure. So I like the upside of him, like I said, and I hope he does well. But I'm not willing to pay that price to find out here in this spot.
Yeah, the argument I'd make for how he could possibly win a decision is like he's getting picked apart, but then he drops Gavin Tucker or something like that.
Steals around with
steal around a big submission attempt, something like that. But here's my thing: it's like I'm not worried about layoffs. Layoffs, like I think I've talked about this ad nauseum. I think are myths in terms of putting stock into them, unless we're dealing with like a reconstructive surgery, like when Chris Weidman comes back. I mean, you know, tip your cap to a legend, but he will be faded. Just, you know, Anderson Silva was never the same when he broke his leg. Like, it's just when you come back from like a reconstructive surgery, that's when I put stock into layoffs. But here, it's more about the age I'm worried about than the layoff, because last time this dude came off a layoff, he went on his biggest win streak to date. So it's not the layoff that's the issue. It's about the durability, the age. This dude, Diego, is an opportunistic finisher. But opportunistic finisher that, like, again, you got to understand, he can absolutely catch Tucker with a shot, possibly a submission. Gavin's a black belt, but still, I mean, Diego seems like a very advanced no-gi jiu-jitsu guy. Like, I bet like he's consistently tapping out black belts in the gym. The guy is disgusting with his no-gi grappling. It's just that, you know what I'm worried about. You know exactly what I'm worried about. If he's not hurting Tucker, if he's not getting him out of there, he's going to get picked apart, assuming Tucker looks like what he's looked like throughout his whole career.
Yeah, he's going to have speed. Tucker's going to have the speed advantage. Yeah, it's definitely put the pace on him. So, yeah, I agree. It's going to be concerning for sure if he's not able to hurt him and kind of change the tide of that fight and have things, excuse me, have things go his way for sure.
All that said, I'm going to still pick Lopes because Tucker does sketch me out. But yeah, I mean, if y'all got in early, you did your job. But minus 180, I mean, come on, you missed the best of it. So there's no reason to force it. But best case scenario for us is Diego Lopes comes out here and like destroys him. And then when he fights like a guy who's not 37, who doesn't have durability concerns, who you know, is another processed fighter, I think we're going to get an amazing fade spot. I think we're going to get an all-time fade spot. So let's just be patient, sit this one out, and wait till the next one. And I think
that's how you got to play it sometimes, man. You got to pick, you know, exactly what you said. I like it.
Yeah. And I mean, if we had more time, I'll pull up the featherweight rankings to like show you certain guys. I mean, just look at the two guys he fought that he lost to already. Brito, like if they ran it back, I got Brito again. I got Movsar again. And the beauty of that fight is now Movsar is about to be undervalued his next fight because people are under the impression that he looked bad. Dude, he did not look bad in that fight. It's just this dude is a serious black belt. And when you take down a serious black belt, shit can happen. That's just how it goes. But not everyone that Movsar takes down from here on out is going to be having near subs on him. It was just a stylistic matchup type thing. So, yeah.
Agreed.
Now, next up in the light heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Tanner Boser, who's 20-10, taking on Aleksa Camur, who's 6-2. And currently they got it Tanner Boser minus 150, the comeback on Aleksa Camur plus 130. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is Camur an Ohio guy like you?
He is. Yep. Trains with Stipe. Yep. In the camp over there. It's strong style. So very good, underrated camp. Talking about, not just because it's from Ohio, but honestly, I mean, the strong style fight team over there, really good coaching staff, really good underrated fighters, up and coming fighters as well. And of course, you got, you know, the legend of Stipe in there too, kind of, you know, that iron sharpens iron, so to speak. So Camur getting some good training in for sure.
So, you know how I talked about this whole layoff thing being a myth, right? Well, here, this is a double-edged sword. Let me explain what I mean. So a kid like Camur, I love it when like these young kids take layoffs because he's super inexperienced. So you give a kid that was 25 at the time 2 years to level up his skills, because that's what was missing. I mean, he was clearly not ready at the time. So why don't we give you 2 years to work on your skills, come back out here and let's see what you've done. Because you give a 25-year-old 2 years to improve, he might come out looking like a completely different man. Now he's only 27 now. But on the other side of things, so that's what I thought initially. I was like, all right, 2 year layoff, this is good. Like, he's going to come back looking better. He's going to add some skills, maybe feel a little more comfortable in there, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But The issue is I heard that he might have had like a big time shoulder surgery. Is that do you know if that's true or if that's bullshit?
I have not heard. I'm not like, I haven't talked to camp or anything like that. So I'm not sure, to be honest with you, 100%. But obviously, if he's coming off of a major, something like that, shoulders, you can't even mess around. I mean, we're going to see Prohaska come back here eventually with that. And I'm questioning his comeback because of, how drastic that was. So, yeah, in a situation like that, I cannot verify if that's true or not, honestly.
So, for the fans listening, if any of y'all know, please leave a comment below and let us know if it's true that Camur's coming off the surgery. Because on one hand, if he's not coming off of surgery, 2 years, hey, that's the perfect amount of time because I talk about it all the time. He's 6-2, Nick. A guy with 10 or less pro fights in his 20s is going to be making big leaps every single fight. You give him 2 years to hone his skills a little bit, because you saw his UFC fights. He was too green. He didn't belong. It's not because he sucks. He just never really got along, regional. You didn't get like
a glimpses too, like people. I think there's definitely an upside to this kid for sure. I like what I see. You know what I mean? I think he could be a very well-rounded, difficult out for a lot of fighters. So looking forward to seeing him back in here. This is a good matchup, man. This is another head scratcher, to be honest with you. It's not an easy fight to pick.
Yeah. So Pat, I don't know if this is true, but Pat says it was an elbow injury, all healed. And Andrew says had an ulnar nerve issue. So I don't know, guys. Don't take my word for it. Take these guys' word for it. I don't know if that's true or not, and I'm not a doctor either, so I don't fucking know. But what I do know is that Tanner Boser is a finished product, and Tanner Boser is a guy I prefer at heavyweight. And let me tell you why. Because at heavyweight, he's a smaller guy, therefore he's the faster guy. He had a big speed edge, and he's able to, kind of outpoint guys at times, not against Arlovsky, but at times, he's a much faster man. You saw what he did to Philippe Lynch. But here dropping to 205, because for the longest time, a lot of media members would piss off Tanner Boser, asking him like, dude, when are you going to drop to 205? And he's like, what, am I not like having success at heavyweight? Like, what are you talking? Like, he'd get mad at them for asking him if he's going to 205. Now he is at 205. And I just think it's a bad move. Like, you gave away all your speed advantage. Now you're going to be one of the slower guys here, and you're already unspectacular skills wise. No disrespect. I mean, he's a serviceable fighter, but let's not act like, this guy's going to blow you away in terms of athleticism or in terms of skills. And that's just the bottom line. So now at 205, I just don't expect bright skies. I do think that he's further along than Camur. I mean, look, we're talking about 8 fights compared to 31 fights. Yes, but what's Camur going to look like here? Because again, you give a kid like that time to improve, he might look like a completely different man. So, I mean, I'll pick Boser because right now, if you pull up their last few fights, Boser's just simply ahead of him. But Boser's not a guy I'm sold on. Boser's not a guy I trust. And while I'm not saying Camur is, there might be some upside. Young kid, took time off, making improvements, big dog odds. What do you think?
Yeah, no, there's question marks. And you know how disappointed I was when the way, light heavyweight debut went for Boser? Because I like the guy. I mean, like you said, a heavyweight, he had some decent performances for sure. You saw what he's capable of. I like the fact that he's like getting better. He took it so serious that his body transformed, even a heavyweight. You know what I mean? He put the work in. Like, there's a lot of good things about Boser. But for him to come down to light heavyweight and get sparked like he did, it's just not a good look, man. And especially against Kudalaba like that. I know Kudalaba has some power, but I was expecting better. And it would have been a nice test to see him stuff some takedowns, whatever the case may be in that fight. So I wish it would have played out a little bit longer. But that being said, yeah, it's hard to trust this version of him to see what we got. I know he's hungry. He's saying all the right things in a way. I mean, I know his social media is funny too, because he made a lot of other comments recently as well. But that being said, a guy like Camur, man, his wrestling's probably better. Obviously, he can take this fight to the ground. He can kind of grab people out against the cage a little bit too. The striking's got to be relatively close, although you have to edge Boser here in that spot. But you said the speed advantage should be Camur, so it's going to be interesting. I can't lay chalk. This is another spot where, to me, this is a head scratcher type of fight. Like, I've went through it a million times, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I could see realistically both these guys winning. So it's a dog or pass situation. You can't. I think the line should be a little bit tighter. I think Camur's getting a little bit disrespected. I understand the layoff kind of factors in that too, because there's a lot of question marks. And again, we just saw some of the comments out there. A lot of people do know, and thank you guys for commenting and letting us know a little bit more details about his arm injury. So yeah, there's just so many question marks and things going on right now in this fight that it's just hard to kind of get a very solid indicator. Confidence level be really high on this fight, honestly. So it's a wild card for me. That's why I kind of lean towards the dog. So I'll pick Camur to pull off the upset here.
I think you talked me into it because it's like, okay, the experience edge of Boser, we know all that, but like, I don't see improvements at this point anymore. I think that we're getting a finished product here. All the upsides on Camur. It's just, has he leveled it up enough to beat a guy this experienced? We'll find out, but I got zero interest in laying a price on Boser ever again. So yeah, I'll go with you on Camur. Let's see if the Ohio boy can get it done. I'll be rooting for him, man.
Yeah, and again, no Ohio bias. A lot of times I am biased towards Ohio fighters, but this has nothing to do with that. Honestly, you know what I mean? So just being honest with you, I just think I like the stylistic matchup. I just think he's got enough to maybe make this very challenging, and it's going to be a close competitive fight. So that's why I go.
And the closer I look into it, I mean, Camur's done a couple things I like. I mean, he landed over 100 significant strikes against Nikolai Negumariano, which he's a dude that beat Kennedy. He's a dude that got to a fight with Olberg. He's a guy that's been doing his thing, man. And he also
it's not an easy fight for anybody. You're right, absolutely.
And he's landed takedowns in 2 of his 3 UFC fights. So, Boser can't stuff a takedown. So maybe.
I mean, I think that's the back pocket sort of thing for Camur too. I think he can probably, and if it's a competitive round, maybe steals one takedown real quick, opportunistic to yeah, it's one of those situations. I think very tough. Like I said, not very confident in this fight at all.
Guys, as always, exercise proper money management and think for yourself, because like, I have no idea what's going to happen in this fight, but I'll pick Camur. Let's see what happens. Now, this fight, I do have a strong opinion on, and this is my first bet of the night. Next up in the lightweight division, we got Ignacio La Jaula Bahamondes. He's 14-4, representing Chile. He's taking on Ludovit Klein, who's 19-4, representing Slovakia. And currently, Nick, they got it. Ignacio Bahamondes, minus 225. The comeback on Ludovit Klein is plus 190. So I parlayed Ignacio at minus 185 with Bobby Green like a couple weeks ago. So I got it basically evens, like minus 102, slight even. So I play it to win 3.5 units, because I was originally going to lay Ignacio. I was going to risk about the same to win 2 units, but I thought Bobby was, not to use words like this, but I thought he was a lock. I think anyone against Tony is a lock in the UFC at this day and age, no disrespect. So I parlayed them together. So to win 3.5 units. And the reason why is this, man. Ignacio is a guy that even before his UFC debut, I've been hearing from guys like Bilal Muhammad, who I respect his opinion, saying that this guy's the best striker that he's ever trained with or been in there with. And Bilal's fought Wonder Boy, right? Bilal's fought Luke, right? Like, so if Bilal's fought Gil Burns, for him to say that Ignacio is the best striker he's ever moved around with, that speaks volumes. And the kid's 6'3" at lightweight, which is already massive. He's got a very good process. He fights behind his jab, nasty calf kicks, can put up the volume numbers we want. I mean, if I pull up his last few fights, I mean, even the debut against Makdessi, which I just consider to be kind of a debut stunt. I say a debut stunt, a one fight of the night, and he still landed 112 significant strikes. But the reason I call it a debut stunt is because if they ever ran it back, I'm betting Ignacio again. Just like I talk about this one all the time. If Tyler Santos and Mara Romero Barella ever ran it back, and you give me minus 150 on Tyler Santos again, I'm betting that 10 times out of 10, right? Like, just sometimes in their debut, they don't perform like you want them to. It is what it is. You see that kind of stuff all the time. Then they come back. Oh, and I learned from my mistakes, because Daniel Zellhuber, exact same bullshit when he fought Trey Ogden. It was like, what? That wasn't even about Trey Ogden looking like some contender. That was just about Daniel Zellhuber pulled his debut stunt. Next fight against Lando looks like the guy we saw on tape previously. So you got to sometimes give him a pass for that debut performance. I did, and look what he's done since then. I mean, against Roosevelt Roberts, one of the best spinning heel kick knockouts in UFC history, right up there with Edson Barboza. The next fight against Rong Zhu, against Zhu Rong. So check, I tweeted out something about, because you remember Zhu Rong, he pulled a stunt that week, man. He dyed his hair pink. He missed weight by 5 pounds. He was doing the whole bit. I said, if you think a guy that dyed his hair pink and missed weight by 5 pounds is beating Ignacio Bahamondes in a fight, then I'm sorry, my friend, but Zhu Rong, so that was a good spot. And then Trey Ogden, doubled him up on strikes and, easy clinic. So here against Ludovit Klein, Ludovit is a great hammer, but he's a terrible nail. I mean, Ludovit is explosive. He's got a nasty high kick. He's got a little sneaky guillotine too from time to time. And his last fight, he went out there and hit 2 takedowns in there. So he's been mixing things up from time to time. I just think that, Ludovit Klein, when he's the hammer, he's doing great, but when it's time for him to take it, I think he breaks and fights. And Bahamondes, there's no breaking that guy. I mean, you gotta knock the guy out. You gotta badly compromise him. You gotta hurt him. And if Ludovit can get off on that high kick, props to him. But let me tell you this: 5'7" versus 6'3". Now that doesn't mean shit, because look at Volkanovski, who's 5'6", listed at 5'6". Between you and me, he might be shorter than that. Taking out Max Holloway, who's basically 6 feet tall, taking out Yair, who's 6 feet tall, right? He's beating all these taller guys. I mean, Volk fought at fucking welterweight back in the day, you understand? Fighting Islam, who's like 5'10", right? So, like, the height thing ain't the issue. The height, on paper, the height's an issue because Ignacio knows how to fight tall. Ignacio knows how to use that length. And when it's striker versus striker, and you got a guy who actually knows how to fight like a real tall man. Look, there's certain things we're worried about. I called him a tall man, therefore he's got tall man defense. So yes, of course I'm worried about that. And Ludovit is an explosive guy, but I truly believe it's Ludovit finish or bust. The only way Ludovit could win a decision here, because he's not going to out volume him. Like at the end of this fight, assuming that Ludovit didn't get like a highlight reel KO, the box score, like, Ignacio is going to have him doubled up on strikes, right? It's just the only way Ludovit could win like a decision is like back to kind of one of these earlier fights we were talking about, where Ignacio is picking him apart and then maybe a big wobble, or maybe he gets dropped and you steal the round like that. Some stuff like that. But besides that, man, Ignacio is gonna, double this man up on strikes, chop down the calf, pop his head back with strikes. If Ludovit tries to shoot, Ignacio's got those long man chokes, that power guillotine, the Darces, the anacondas, ninja chokes, whatever the case may be. I think he's a problem for everybody, like, as he starts to progress, but especially for Ludovit Klein. If it's just a battle of heart and will, oh my God. And if it's a battle of volume, oh my God. So just please don't get finished or badly compromised. And we're cashing 3.5 units here. So yeah, I got Ignacio on the spot and I love it.
I like it. Much respect, man. And the VFS camp that they're from out of Chicago, or that area, whatnot, it's highly underrated. It's so underrated. So it's definitely one of those cases where, again, iron sharpens iron, and it's not just getting that nationwide recognition. It will one day, though. It's one of those spots where I think eventually the secret will be, the cat out of the bag kind of thing. I know a lot of the diehards understand and they know about the gym, but I'm talking about
you mean when Bilal wins the belt, that's when it's going to happen.
Possibly, man. I mean, he's obviously trending in the right direction as well. The work they've done with Yair, all these guys, man, it just really respect that camp. They're doing things the right way. So he's only going to get better, man. Like you said, Bahamondes, I get it. I understand it. I just can't lay the price right now. There's been a lot of sharp action that hit the screen today. If you're looking at it, I mean, I was watching the screen, working throughout the day, all day long. And I saw the steam hit come in various times too. And at this point now where it's minus 225, I think Klein is dangerous enough that I am going to probably leave it alone and look at the dog or leave it alone completely. Like look at a finishing prop possibly. Like you said, though, I agree with you. I think Bahamondes is very durable. I mean, the heart that he displayed in that McDessie fight, all the situations he's been in, I like what I see, and I think he does have no quit in him. And I am concerned for sure about, like you said, I like how you put it, the hammer. When he's a hammer, he's all right, but when he's the nail, he's not. That's true with Klein. But give him the benefit of the doubt here with so much steam coming in there. Again, it's another spot where I got to stay away from the favorite, though. I mean, as far as a pick goes, a pure pick, okay, I will definitely pick Bahamondes, but I cannot lay the chalk where it is right now at minus 200 above. So I would stay away from it.
Okay, but what do you think about the 75-85 I got?
Oh my God. I mean, if you're getting those type of prices for sure, there's no question about it. Yeah. And again, a lot of sharps agreed with you. So you're sitting at a very good spot and you should feel good about it. Even regardless, dude, if he gets sparked and you lose, like, obviously I don't want you, but I'm just saying if you do lose your bet, you still made a good bet at the price. I mean, people might not understand that and they might think, oh, only, if the bet wins, it's only a good bet. Like, no, that's not true. If you got the value, a lot of sharps were on that same boat early on, and they're not manipulating this line. I mean, it's a lot of belief that, that side is the right side. So, yeah, no, you made a good bet regardless. I mean, unless this thing drops down to like minus 150, then you did make a great bet, but I don't think that's happening anytime soon. So
if that happens, I'm adding more,
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I mean, if it happens, but it won't get to that point. So, yeah, you made a great bet regardless. And I think you're on the right track for sure. Bahamondes is definitely the upside here. But again, Klein, just kind of one of those sneaky spots where I think maybe we were underestimating a little bit, but again, it's just one of those things where I pick Bahamondes and just can't lay the chalk.
I mean, you'd think that he would have had something for Jai Herbert, man. He lost that fight. It was just a soft ass point deduction that made it be a draw. So yeah, there was that. And then as far as Nick saying, why it's important to get the best of the line, I feel like a lot of people don't understand that concept because they think it's just about, you either picked the winner or you didn't. Well, if you guys got 100% hit rates, then it is all about picking winners. But
right.
Unfortunately, I don't have an 100% hit rate. So the reason it's important to get the best of the line is because you maximize your wins and you minimize your losses. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Like, I'm not thinking about just this event. I'm thinking about at the end of the year. I'm thinking about in 10 years and 20 years, like all the little 0.3s and 0.4s you add to your bets, like all that shit adds up over time, man. And that's why it's important to always try your best to get the best of the line. Because like I said, you'll maximize your wins and you'll minimize your losses. And at the end of the day, I mean, this game is so hard to beat anyways that you have to get any edge anywhere you can. So
sharps lose all the time, man. We see it. Everybody think, sharp action. No, sharps lose a lot. Sharps that agree on a certain side. Dude, there's cases that I get an outstanding closing line value. First of all, in MMA and UFC, it's frustrating sometimes because we get most of us that are, in the know, whatever, meaning that we've been doing this for a while. We usually get ahead of the markets and ahead of the line moves because, we anticipate some of that stuff. But it comes back and bites you more times than not too. A lot of you're killing the line move by 150 cents, which is still good. I'm not saying that's not a good thing, but I'm just saying it does blow up in your face sometimes more so than other sports. But you still want to get that closing line value no matter what, 100%. Like that is a line at a certain price. I'm glad like we're covering this a little bit is much different than a line. Like I said, if you miss the boat, if you're laying minus 150, minus 175, minus 200, and then it closes at 250. You made a really good bet. But if you're laying minus 250 and it closes 250, you made a terrible bet, in my opinion, at least. If the fight wins, okay. If your line, let me just say this, and let me correct myself a little bit, because if you have the line at minus 350 and you lay 250, if your line is 350, then you have some value, whatever the case may be, then that's fine. But if, most people aren't really lining these fights themselves, they're not really going by that sort of thing at all, and they're just kind of trying to follow the steam and getting on fights at the wrong time. You cannot do that. Because like I said, there's been a lot of sharp action that I've seen, all one-way sharp action, and it goes down in flames sometimes, man. So if you're hitting the line at the worst possible time, not a good formula for success.
For example, last week with De Lima, okay? So some people got him at minus 125, and then some people got people got him at minus 230. Now,
perfect example.
Both bets lost, right? But which bet did you lose more on? You lost more on minus 230 than you did on minus 125. So you're saving money. You're minimizing your loss, taking the best of the line. And on Lewis, if you bet him at the pick 'em price, look, you won, but you left a lot of money on the table because he closed what? Plus 185, plus 200. So just saying.
You want me to be honest with you? Last week, what I did early on, I was on the De Lima train too. Like I hopped on and got an outstanding line. I think I laid around minus 140-ish. And then when the line went up to over minus 200, 220-ish or whatever, I hopped off. I got off it, man. I was like, you know what? This is ridiculous at this point now. And I hopped off and I got on Derek Lewis. You know what I mean? And I'm glad I did now. It worked out. I don't always do that. I don't look to do that. But it was just one of those things that everything was kind of feeling that way for me. And then Derek Lewis hitting the scales. That's the other thing. We saw how Derek Lewis looked on the scales, right? And some of these predictions, that's the thing. You guys got to pay attention. I think those are the people that are kind of trying to get a little bit better at their betting. You have to watch everything, the line movements, everything you can throughout the week, especially on fight week. And then obviously the weigh-ins do matter. Now, again, sometimes we overestimate or underestimate weigh-ins. You know, we take that too much into consideration. But in this case, for me, it was a flag right away. When you saw Derek Lewis looking that, whatever the case may be, I mean, maybe he wasn't motivated, but it looked to me that he was motivated. He came in caring about the win here, and he goes out there, of course. I mean, people can say what they want. It was flukish, whatever the case may be. But it looked to me that he came in motivated. It scared me a little bit of all the traffic and all the sharps that were, betting one direction. I hopped off, man. I was like, you know what? At this price, now there's some value that opened up on Derek Lewis. I jumped off the wagon, hopped on Derek Lewis a little bit. And like I said, it worked out like that. I was like, thank God I did it. But the people that laid minus 125, the people that laid minus 140, the people that laid minus 150, whatever the case may be, all the way up to minus 200, I think you made a decent bet regardless, even though if it went out the window like that, because more times than not, you're probably going to win that bet. So wasn't a bad bet, but it's just, like I said, at certain price points, fighters open up value. So it could be a spot where you like a fighter down here, but you're not going to like him up here. You might like the other guy. And I know a lot of maybe guys that don't understand betting as much it's a head scratcher to them, but that's exactly the way it works, for people who've been doing it for a while. And I'm sure a lot of people on your chats understand it as well.
I mean, if you can guarantee yourself money like you just did in that example, I mean, isn't that what this is all about at the end of the day? So
yeah, we get greedy. I get greedy too, though. Sometimes I don't want to, hedge back, whatever the case may be, because you're like, no, I got such. But yeah, I mean,
but honestly, on a move like that,
yeah. Guaranteed profit is the way to go. Let me tell you, yes, 100%. If you can, and I have friends that, some of my good friends, my best of friends, they that's all they do for a living is scalp. That is you know what I mean? They're taking both sides of everything. They're always on both sides. They're, it's just one of those things, and they're earning a profit. So it might be a smaller commission on each fight, whatever the case may be, but they're making it work. They're not losing. They're not taking L's ever because they're getting the best of it on both sides of things. So that's pretty basic to me. I'm not I'm not one of those guys. I'll scalp when I can, and I'll pick those spots when I can, but I'm more of, pick my spots, get some line value, stay on that side, obviously, something like that. But there's definitely money to be made. And if you can get a guaranteed earn, it's hard to pass that up, man.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And moral of the story, get the best of the line, maximize your wins, minimize your losses. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got Raoni Barcelos. She's 17-4, taking on Kyler Phillips, who's 10-2. Currently, they got it. Kyler Phillips minus 215. The comeback on Raoni Barcelos is plus 185. So here's another layoff where the layoff itself doesn't concern me. It's the PED suspension that concerns me, because this dude, Kyler Phillips, is an explosive, nasty striker, man. I mean, he's also a black belt on the mat. Like, the guy can do everything, man. And when he's out there in his flow state, especially that first round, the guy looks like one of the best fighters in the world in that first round. And then Raoni, man, when he came into the UFC, people were calling this man WEC Aldo. That's the kind of hype he had. And man, I loved Raoni against Miles Johns. I really did. I absolutely loved that matchup for him, because I love fading guys that have no output versus output machines. Like, you remember Raoni Barcelos' fight with Victor Henry? Where he lost?
Oh, yes. Which was actually a surprise to many. That's kind of Victor Henry's coming out party, so to speak. And then, of course, he disappointed after that. But yeah, definitely.
So in the individual rounds of the Victor Henry fight, meaning round 1, round 2, round 3, in those individual rounds, Raoni landed more in those individual rounds than Miles Johns has in complete fights. That was the output difference. And oh my God, I love that spot. But here, I'm not sure, because it's to me, the Umar knockout to a lot of people is actually a huge red flag. To me, it's not. I think that Umar is disgusting. I think that Umar is one of the best guys in the world. And I think that although Umar might not have a bunch of knockouts on his record, that was a beautiful combo, man. That wasn't about Raoni's chin. That's credit Umar right there. As far as that's my opinion on the matter. I know some people might disagree, but I think that was all Umar. So credit to him. Here against Kyler, I mean, I just kind of see this being a 3-round fight where these two are getting after it, and 1-1 going to the third round type thing, assuming no one's been finished, and who's ready to dig deep. And Kyler seems to slow down bad as fights progress. That's how Howley and Paiva was able to steal that win away from him. Whether you think he won or lost, we can't debate that Kyler slowed down dramatically in that fight. And then Raoni, it just sucks. It's like we were talking about, he got signed when he was like 32, 33. So he was like right there in his prime, entering his prime. But now all of a sudden, he's 36, 37. So it's just not the same. But skills wise, he's got everything I want. I mean, so we talk about his black belt in jiu-jitsu. His dad's like a fucking like Corel belt, which is like, there's only like 10 of those on planet Earth or something. But in addition to that, this guy was on the Brazilian wrestling team. And then, his striking's on point too. So I like everything about Raoni. And then Kyler's kind of got that more traditional martial arts background. So explosive. I'm curious how he looks off this PED suspension. Normally, I'll put more stock in a PED suspension with older guys. Like, remember when Ortega popped for steroids early in his UFC career? I put zero stock into it because he was like 23, 24. I was like, he'll be fine. But when TRT Vitor came back, looking deflated, that's where you put stock into the PED suspension. So maybe I shouldn't put stock into that. I'm just not sure what to think about this fight. And then there's the whole talk about he's plus 185, So like, is that accurate in your opinion? Like, what do you think, man? Because I'm having a tough time reading this fight.
Yeah, I know it's tough. Another good, too. This is one of those cards that like you can make a case that it's going to be a roller coaster ride for sure. And this is another one of those spots. It's not an easy one, but there's been a lot of sharp action that has come in on the Phillips side. But now that it's peaked, and I'm saying it's peaked because I know it's peaked a lot of sharp minds out there that are like in the Barcelos side as it sits right now too. So this line probably will come back down a little bit. Yeah, no, it's tough, man. I mean, 36 years old. Again, the upside of Phillips a little bit younger. There is kind of more to like. There's more to root for, but these guys are both so well-rounded. I think Barcelos is actually a little bit more steady. Like you said, I am concerned a little bit about Phillips slowing down. But that being said, I think he is probably the more durable fighter here in this case. Even though he's very technical, he's still a little wild and unorthodox at times too. So I do think that Kyler Phillips is the side here, and I'll pick him to win this fight. But again, it's what price point do you get? If you laid around minus 175, minus 180, I can understand it. But if you're laying minus 215, 220, then I think you probably have to look the other way at the dog or just leave it alone. So Barcelos definitely, he's got effectiveness everywhere the fight takes place. His output, like you said, he's got pop in his punches too, man. It's not like, he's just outpointing fighters. He can finish fighters too. And then, of course, he's got a very good ground game, excellent there. So across the board, he's dangerous, and he's going to give Kyler Phillips fits. There's no question about it. But still, I think in this spot here, I'm a little bit more confident in Kyler Phillips, and I think he probably does get it done here.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at their numbers, man, they're very comparable, man, in terms of, the striking numbers are like neck and neck. Maybe Raoni absorbs a couple more strikes. Kyler is very elusive. And then on the mat, I mean, Raoni's takedown defense is insane. And he can also land takedowns too. So can Kyler, but I don't see Kyler taking down Raoni. I don't think. Man, I just wish Raoni wasn't like 36, man. That's still that's the thing that sucks here, But he's plus 180 at the same time. So it's I don't know. Like I really don't. Like I have no idea who you pick.
Another tough one. Yeah. No, I'm gonna pick Kyler Phillips. I do. I think he's more upside here. But again, Barcelos, dude, I've always been a fan from him. When he came into the UFC, I've been watching him fight back in LFA. And so I was looking forward to it. When he finally made the UFC, like, oh, wow, this guy's going to definitely open up some eyes. And he did. I mean, he's a great fighter. So for me, I do like him, and it's difficult. But again, I would not recommend laying minus 215. I think it's a case here, like if you've gotten close to the opening line or, lower numbers around minus 170, you're okay. But if you're laying over 200, again, I call it Phillips because Barcelos could definitely play spoiler here. So for a pick, I'll go with Phillips, but it's definitely a tough one to bet. And again, we talked about it. I mean, this card has those spots from the Boser fight. And there's just a lot of head-scratching question marks from the Lopez-Tucker fight, this fight here, another one. It just seems like it's that kind of trendy card.
Yeah, I'm going to go on the opposite side and take Raoni, but, man, I'm just excited to watch this fight. I know for a fact it's going to be balls to the wall. These guys just getting after it, and, may the best man win. Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Jeremiah Wells. He's 12-2-1. That draw is actually against Basil Hafez, who just fought Jack Dilla. and his opponent, Carlston Harris, is 18-5. Currently, they got it. Jeremiah Wells. So a lot of action's been coming in on Carlston. It's minus 125. Wells, the comeback on Carlston is plus 105. Interesting fight, Nick, because both guys are 36 years old, but both guys are serious, man. I mean, this dude Wells, like, man, he's a physical specimen. Like, I'm not that far off from his age. You know, I'm 33. He's like 36. I hope I look like him when I'm 36. You know what I'm saying? And when he's 40, he's still going to look like that. So I hope when I'm 40, I look like like Jeremiah Wells, you know? But listen, man, the guy, we already know about the one-hitter quitter. We know about the Gracie black belt. But I really like those takedowns too. He's very explosive with his takedowns. And we found out in that last fight, he got that dog in him, you know. He overcame some big knockdowns. We know Semmelsberger has an insane knockdown rate, 10 knockdowns in 9 UFC fights, you know. Like, even in fights that Semmelsberger loses, he knocks guys down, you know. It's crazy. And Jeremiah was able to overcome them somehow. Other refs might have stopped the fight, by the way, but Jeremiah was able to overcome it, and then it was his turn to implement the wrestling. Did a great job. My issues with Jeremiah is at space, like in the in-betweens. That's where I kind of think Carlston Harris, you know, being the longer guy, is going to kind of be able to pick him apart with the jab. I think both guys are a little bit on the chinnier side. So either guy could get knocked out in this spot, but I don't see the takedowns coming as easily for Jeremiah as they did in the last fight. And similarly, I don't see the takedowns coming as easy for Carlston as they did in the last fight. So I see a lot of striking exchanges where that's where I kind of see Carlston, you know, like I said, being the more active guy, actually fighting behind a jab, having more volume, having more process in his striking. It's just I'm worried about his chin, also worried about Jeremiah's chin, but Jeremiah shooting a sloppy shot here. Now, he is a black belt himself, but Carlston's got those long arms and he's got those long man chokes. That choke he hit on Aguilera, double check, it was an anaconda or a Darce. Anaconda. Man, that anaconda was absolutely slick beyond belief. And he's beating some good dudes, man. I mean, you see Kasangana's up at 205 now, about to fight, one fight away from $1 million in PFL. He's been doing his thing. Only lost to Rachmanov as of recently. Back in the day, he lost to that Jara guy who now has been getting exposed. But back then, that kid was a prospect. He had come off a big win over the Austrian Wonder Boy. Remember Nardiev? Jara beat that dude's ass, and he knocked out Carlston. But Carlston also has a win, believe it or not, over Michel Pereira on his
way back in the day. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, and I think he might have. It's been a while since I've seen it. I think he might have even overcome a knockdown in that fight. So the chin is in question for both guys. Either guy could get knocked out. I just don't see Jeremiah having as much wrestling success here. And that's where I'm either going to be right or wrong in how I handicap this fight, right? Like, if Jeremiah is able to get consistent takedowns here, then just my read on this fight is off. But I don't see that being the case. I just see it being a competitive fight. Carlston a little bit more active, a little bit longer. So don't get nuked into the fifth row. And I think he's got a good chance to win. Because it's funny, because pre-tape, I was leaning Jeremiah. And tape is not the be-all, end-all, Nick. Tape has sometimes talked me off of the right spots.
I know, me too. You're right. Sometimes you see too much, or you know what I mean? You look into, I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, so I don't know, but after I watch tape, I'm kind of thinking this is a dog or pass situation. So I'll go Carlston here.
I'll go the other way. And again, it's a difficult fight for me to call too. I mean, Carlston's made me a little bit of money so far in his UFC career. I've never been a big Jeremiah Wells supporter, but he did impress me in his last fight for sure. Like, I think he's starting to put it all together, and his explosiveness in his wrestling, everything like that. I think you keep him on the right track in his fight IQ, get that conditioning up a little bit. I think he's going to be okay. So in this spot here, I'll go with Jeremiah Wells because it seems like the majority of the people are in agreement with you and they're going the Harris route. And normally I would say it's probably a dog or pass situation, but right now it's trending down to a pick. And I think there's maybe a little bit of wiggle room on the Jeremiah Wells side. So I do like him in this spot, but very slightly. Another tough one though. I mean, again, confidence level not high at all because I do realistically think this fight can go either way. So I can understand why people are going to take the dog money there Carlston here. So there's been more sharp action hitting that side than on the well side for sure.
So, like, obviously, it doesn't make me comfortable being on the same side as everyone else. I don't like that at all. But you're picking Wells. Like, where do you kind of like? What leans you towards his side?
I mean, I do think that he is probably the better wrestler here, and I think he can stay out of trouble here too. Again, even if he doesn't get the fight to the floor, because that is a big question mark, and I know it's not going to be easy, but I think he can kind of catch it. He's going to have the speed advantage, and I think he can. Like you said, they're both a little bit chinny too, so it's who lands cleaner. And I think Jeremiah Wells is kind of a little bit more explosive, but those long limbs of Harris, of course, worry me a little bit too. There's, like you said, Darces, all that stuff he can do with the chokes, but I do think that it's kind of both these guys are chinny, but I think Jeremiah Wells has that more explosive speed and that power. And again, in his back pocket, if he can mix in a takedown, if it's a close fight, whatever the case may be, it'll be a good one for sure. But I'm leaning a little bit more towards Wells because I think he's just a tad bit more explosive, and that speed should matter here.
He is a tad bit more explosive. There is no debate about that. So it's like the explosiveness versus like the length and kind of craftiness of the more seasoned guys. So this should be a great fight. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got Billy Quarantillo. It's not Quarantillo, Quarantillo. Billy Q. He's 17-5, taking on Damon the Leech Jackson, who's 22-5. And currently, Nick, they got it. Billy Q minus 175. The comeback on Damon Jackson's plus 150. Now, here's my thing, man. I love me some Billy Q. Who doesn't love them some Billy Q? I mean, he's the man. A great guy, aside from the fighting, and then just an exciting fighter to watch. He's got that dog in him. He goes for it. My issue is that Billy Q is not a guy I lay minus 175 on. I just don't. He's a guy I like to back at dog odds because more often than not, he loses the first round every single fight. It's usually a comeback, which I love my comeback guys. I talk about all the time, my Cheetos, but I bet those guys at plus 160 odds. I just can't be laying minus 175 on a comeback guy. And I think that Damon Jackson, for all his shortcomings, I mean, when he gets the back, man, I mean, he's able to just grind out rounds. And if he can lock in that body triangle, I mean, I don't think he's going to choke out Billy or anything like that, but I think that round's over. 10-9 Damon Jackson, right? But Damon does slow down in fights. The Argueta fight's a good example of that. And Billy Q, like, I think if this gets to round 3, I think Billy Q is winning that round 3. It's just, is he going to be getting grinded out those first 2 rounds and lose a 29-28? That's what I'm kind of worried about. But I mean, we know if they're still there in round 3, Billy's going to put it on him. That's just what Billy does. But can Billy get started a little bit earlier this time?
Yeah, that is the case for Billy Q, man. I mean, that's unfortunate, but he is better round 2, round 3. It's one of those cases where it might pay dividends here if he can't. If Damon Jackson can't submit him early, but dude, even though if you don't have a sub on your resume, like Billy Q has never been submitted, Damon Jackson is one of those offensively gifted submission artists that you just never know, man. I don't want this guy on my back. I don't want him around my neck. Like, he's just that good at what he does. And he's starting to be a little bit more of a threat on the feet, but that's not exactly where you want to be, especially with Billy Q. I think overall Billy Q's been really impressive, man. So, yeah, it's one of those things, though. I would expect him to maybe lose round 1 if he doesn't get finished. I mean, I think there's an outside shot he does get submitted because that's just how good Damon Jackson can be. But I do lean towards Billy Q here. I think that round 2, round 3 will probably be his. If he can survive those spots, I think maybe round 2 will have more success stuffing the takedowns or getting position, getting back to his feet, hopefully, and not getting, dominated on the ground or with enough time or controlled for a long period of time either. So I do like Billy Q here as a pick. This is another spot, though, that has two-way sharp conflicting action. So we saw some early sharp action come in on Damon Jackson, which, again, I sit back and say I can understand it. Then we saw some, after it kind of hit the bottom a little bit, we saw some sharp action take it right back up a little bit too. So, which, again, I can understand because what we just said can play out very easily. So another difficult spot at the betting window. I don't think I can lay the chalk, man. If this drops back down a little bit, maybe I'll hop on Billy Q. But I think at a certain price point, Damon Jackson looks a little bit too attractive for me in this spot here. And Billy Q has been put on his back in the past. His takedown defense is improving. But if he's got one kryptonite, that probably could be it. He get controlled a little bit on the ground by more dominant wrestler grapplers, right? And Damon Jackson kind of fits that bill. And the other side of it, though, Damon Jackson's chin, man. I mean, if Billy Q gets going, he's going to probably end the fight and get Damon Jackson out of there too. So I think they're kind of both each other's kryptonite, so to speak. Maybe not as fair to say with Billy Q because he hasn't been submitted, but I could see, excuse me again, I could see Billy Q, kind of weathering that early storm and having a little bit of problems and then kind of winning here. So Damon Jackson, if he can implement the right game plan, I think he can win this fight too. So again, another kind of head scratcher, but I cannot lay the chalk on Billy Q. And another guy that's made me some money in the past.
Billy, low key, has got some pop in his punches lately, man. I mean, that Gabriel Benitez fight was an absolute statement. I mean, that was ridiculous. That wasn't even a comeback.
I was shocked, man. I bet on him. I mean, I was expecting him to do well in that fight. I had, but the way he just dominated that fight was I was pleasantly surprised that he was able to dispose of somebody that talented that easy.
Yeah. So I'm picking Billy Q.
Yep. I'm with you. As far as the pick goes, for sure. Just another tough spot to bet.
I just hate minus 175.
Yeah, it is tough, man. And David Jackson, again, it's just hard to lay that chalk. Unless you know that your guy can stuff the takedowns and just, blast away. I bet Ige against Damon Jackson. I was hoping, but again, I had question marks going. Ige worries you sometimes. He gets put on his back a little bit, right? In those spots. Of course, I felt more comfortable and I thought he would stuff those takedowns and, find that knockout. So, but that being said, again, here's another spot where we know that he could possibly get put on his back here, Billy Q. So definitely not an easy one to lay a bunch of chalk.
Next up in the flyweight division, we got Jake Hadley. He's 10-1, taking on Cody Durden, who's 15-4-1. Currently, they got it. Jake Hadley minus 200. The comeback on Cody Durden is plus 170. So I mean, I just gotta preface this by saying I'm very biased towards Cody Durden, friend of mine. I mean, I've been to the dude's house. I've met his wife and kids. So I'm not gonna ever pick against Cody Durden, even against Davis and Figueredo. That's my friend, and I want to see him do well. But all that aside, dude's a fucking hard worker, man. Not just his work rate in the cage, because I mean, you saw his last fight, scored 11 takedowns against Charles Johnson and set the record for the second most takedowns in flyweight history. First goes to Mokaev against Charles Johnson too. Mokaev had 12. Cody had 11, so he missed the record by 1, but he's still in the history books, second most. So pretty badass. And I've seen the dude train, and he's just such a professional, man. He's got his orthopedist with him at the gym, and he's got his people, he's got his water guy with him. He's very serious. And then he's going to ATT in Florida as well. He spends 6 weeks there at a time, training with Pantoja, the champ, so he knows what it feels like to be in there with the best guy in the world, multiple times. And Pantoja is a very soft-spoken guy who isn't one to just give out compliments for the sake of giving them out. And he apparently pulled Cody aside and told him, man, you've been making massive leaps. So for Cody to hear that from the champ, it's got to count for a lot. So the thing with Cody's style, it's a double-edged sword. He goes balls to the fucking wall. That's his style. Basically, if he's going to get tired, you're going to get tired too. That's just how it goes. This guy, Cody Durden is never going to be a guy that runs away in a fight, where you're not going to boo during a Cody Durden fight, because it's nonstop action. And this kid Hadley's a problem. This kid Hadley's very physical. I like everything about him. On the UK, he looked really good in his regionals. Dana White, I talk about it all the time on Contender Series. When I'm watching tape, I don't just watch the fight itself. I also skip to the very end to hear what Dana White had to say about why he did or didn't sign someone, because that's not just Dana's opinion. Prior to him going on the camera, he's in the back with the matchmakers, and it's all influenced by Dana, Sean, Mick, and Hunter Campbell, right? So when he goes on camera, it's basically kind of what all those minds said together. And Dana said that Jake Hadley was special, and Jake Hadley missed weight for that Contender Series fight. So for you to call a guy special that missed weight, normally a guy that misses weight, they're not giving you a contract on Contender Series. They gave this guy a contract after missing weight on Contender Series, and Dana called him special. So that stood out. And then, obviously his debut didn't go his way, but you got to take into consideration Alan Nascimento's got 2 to 3 times the amount of fights. Not only that, Alan Nascimento had the second best fight in Contender Series history against Hadley and Paiva, right behind Sodiq Yusuff and Mike Davis, which is the best fight in Contender Series history. In my opinion, the third best is Carlos Hernandez versus Daniel Bairez, but that's neither here nor there. I felt like after that Nascimento fight, Hadley bounced back very, very impressively. I love his shot selection. I love the fact that he's a very good scrambler. He's opportunistic with his submission ability, but he is susceptible to being taken down. So kind of the way I see this fight going is Cody Durden, he's going to go balls to the wall like he always does, and I think he's going to outpace Jake Hadley. The issue is that with Cody's style, it's not that Cody, lacks jiu-jitsu. The guy's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. The guy, I think, is a state champion wrestler. He doesn't lack any grappling credentials, and he's in there with Pantoja every single day. It's just more so when you fight with that balls to the wall style, you're gonna leave openings. That's just how it goes. So he will be susceptible to submissions and stuff like that, just by the nature of how he goes about his business in there. So that's what I'm worried about, right? If this goes to the scorecards, I'm pretty confident Cody is winning. And Cody's good everywhere. People just talk about his wrestling. Don't sleep on his striking. He was rocking Johnson in that fight, and I've seen him knock out plenty of people on the regional scene as well. Like there's this kid named John Sweeney who I think is the LFA champ now and is like a fight or two away from making it to the UFC. Go check out what Cody Durden did to him on the regional. Cody got him out of there in like 2 minutes, right? So you have to be a certain level. And there's, flukes will happen like the Jimmy Flick fight. If they ever ran it back, what would happen there. So here, it's a tough fight because Jake does have that opportunistic finishing ability, and that's what you need to beat Cody. So Cody's got to be on his P's and Q's. And also, the BMF belt was on the line last week. Can Cody enter the BMF discussion? I mean, he's got 2 fights booked, right? He's fighting Jake this weekend, and then he's fighting Bruno Bulldog Silva in a month from now. He didn't pull out the Bruno fight. He said, give me both fights. Like, dude's got brass balls. I respect everything about him, and, he's my friend, so I hope he comes out here and wins. But I'm not an idiot, and I know that if he's going to lose this fight, it's going to be, a guillotine, a triangle, something like that, after dominating the fight. So hopefully he dominates it without that finish coming, but I'm not delusional. I know Jake Hadley's very good, very serious. I know what he brings to the table, and I know he's a dangerous out. But I think if Cody can, not stay safe per se, but just fight smart here, I think he can put the 3-round clinic on him.
I do as well. I think you broke it down perfectly, and that's my concern too. There's no question who's going to have the wrestling advantage in the spot. Durden is really good at what he does. He's improving all the time too. It's just that defense, the submission defense with a guy like Hadley. He is going to be obviously aware of that too, and he's just so dangerous. So like you said, opportunistic. So that's my fear. But there's no way I can lay 200 on the other side of it, man. If you're going to bet Hadley, you bet a prop, bet it by finish. Because if it hits the cards, I think he's going to lose his fight. So if he doesn't get Durden out of there, I don't think he's going to win. Durden is just, like you said, such a dominant grappler. He knows exactly what he's got going. He's getting better. I like everything that you said. You gave us that insight, too. That makes me feel better, too. But I'm going to pick Durden, man. I think, like I said, if he does stay out of trouble, I think his path to victory is pretty clear. And this is one of those situations where the UFC is almost like, okay, we've seen you kind of, fail in a similar situation. Different but similar. Let's see if you can stuff those takedowns. Let's see if you can weather the storm from an amazing ground fighter, grappler, grinder like Durden is. So this is going to be an ultimate test. That's why I think it's a dog and pass situation. You can't lay the chalk. And the line's kind of climbing up. It was another spot where we've seen some respect on Durden, and then it kind of went away, and it's all Hadley. Again, the hype is on Hadley. The more popular, I guess, global name is Hadley a little bit. Even though Durden's been performing really well in the UFC, I still think there is more hype around Hadley at this point. So I'll go against the hype, and I think that Durden is a problem for him. So I'll pick Durden.
On a side note, what's your opinion on this? Do you ever bet on your friends' fights? Because for some reason, I've never bet on Cody once. Not because I doubt his abilities, just because
you almost don't want to jinx him. No, I'm joking. In a way, I'm just saying, because that's one thing. Like, if you, not that we jinx, but I'm just saying, it was one of those things. You want no vibes at all. Yeah, no, I try to stay away, honestly.
As a disciplined bettor, one of the big rules is not betting where you have a bias, right?
Yeah, there's no question about it. Yeah, but for me, I picked like some of the Ohio fighters we were mentioning. I couldn't pick against those guys like Stipe, Jessica. If you look back historically on podcasts, I will never pick against those guys because again, I had that mutual respect, or you know what I mean. So I totally get what you're saying, 100%. But I mean, I try not to. But as far as betting, no, you can't.
No,
It's
betting.
just again, I don't want to put like you just have your. It's almost like leave them have a clean slate without any betting or I don't know. That's just the way I feel about stuff. You know what I mean? So if it's very difficult to bet friends. And then, you don't want to see like, obviously if your friend wins and you cash in and like, that's a great situation. That's like icing on the cake. But again, in the spot like this, I could totally understand why you would just want to stay away from it. Hope your friend does well and, come out on top. And then you never know. He might get underestimated as he climbs that ladder and you might get a good spot. So,
But it's not even that because it's like against the Brazilian LFA champion fight. I always forget the dude's name. Carlos Moda. Durden was like plus 160 against Charles Johnson. He was a dog there too. And I'm picking him in all these fights. It's just I just feel weird about like betting where I have a bias, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's probably. I mean, you bet with your head, not with your heart, sort of thing. And then but sometimes you can't differentiate. Like sometimes I think the feelings kind of mess with your head and your emotions. So maybe you're not thinking clear. So yeah, I can understand. I can respect it. If that's the case, just stay away from it.
He's also plus 170. So it's like, it's like, damn, you're really dangling the carrot in front of me. But
yeah, for sure. No, dude, it's tempting for sure. But I mean, especially if it's got a clear path to victory, right? As we talked about. So, and he knows that. I mean, like I said, it's just what you said about him being so relentless and just so busy. It does leave openings at times. And Hadley's going to have his moments for sure. So, and even on the feet, obviously Hadley has an advantage, right? He's going to have the striking edge, I think, overall, even though Durden's getting better. So yeah, there's definitely some high side to Hadley, but again, at the price minus 200, man, I'm not interested.
Don't sleep on Durden striking though. He's it's like he's had pro boxing and kickboxing experience. Like it's just, I guess when you get in there, your instincts take over, and the guy was a wrestler first, so.
Yeah, and he's got that wrestler's power too. That if you know what I mean. So yeah, those guys have another level of strength sometimes. So if he connects, yeah, for sure, you can't sleep on him at all.
So next up in the featherweight division, we got Sean Woodson. He's 9-1, taking on Dennis Buzukja, who's 11-2. Currently, they got it. Sean Woodson minus 190. The comeback on Dennis Buzukja is plus 165. So listen, a lot of people have been saying Dennis Buzukja got stiffed on contenders and that this guy deserves his UFC shot. All right, well, show me now. Show me, because we know what Woodson brings to the table. Woodson's a matchup problem just in terms of his size. For featherweight, 6'2" with an 80-inch reach, at 145 pounds. Like a lot of people are just gonna have issues with that off the bat. And then there's been some questionable things like that last fight. I did not expect him to get starched like that against Saldana, but Saldana for the first like round and a half is a problem. It's just for some reason he like slows down as fights progress, but first round and a half, dude's always been a problem in every fight he's in. And this Buzukja guy, like the way I describe him, so he trains with Sarah Longo, he's surrounded by good people. I just kind of think that Buzukja is just kind of like solid everywhere, not really special anywhere, just a solid, well-rounded fighter. Nothing special, but solid.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm not like deep into this fight. I still have to go through it because this was another opponent change. I mean, that's the other thing for Woodson, man. This is the third fighter, correct, on this card? It's been swapped out so much. So I have not dug into this fight greatly, obviously. So I'm not going to give you like a betting advice on this spot, but I do see the line sitting there around minus 190 right now. And if we see some movement, now let's check and see. I'm just curious to see if we did see some steam coming in here as well. Do you know offhand if the line's moved since it opened?
Yeah, I thought so it opened on Bet Online, I think minus 150 Woodson. Now it's minus 190. But I saw someone post a bet on a plus 110 Woodson, so I don't know.
I'll have to look through it a little bit deeper, but yeah, I see where it sits right now around minus 190. It's another one. I mean, just off the top of my head, again, without digging in too deep right now. Of course, I know both these guys a little bit. I mean, Buzukja, like you said, his training camp, he comes from a great camp for sure. Woodson, man, is one of those freaks that, with that length and the ability, I mean, his striking is so good, and he's got those chokes. I mean, he's got a very sneaky, hard to deal with style that you can't really train for. I mean, because he's even his takedown defense, everything about him is better than what you would expect. So he's not an easy out. I can understand, especially when you're coming in here on short notice. But again, Longo and those guys will have their fighters ready, prepared to step in on short notice fights, even if they haven't officially made their UFC or whatnot. So I think he's going to come in here prepared. Obviously, he's getting some respect already. The line's sitting around, minus 200 against a proven UFC vet like Woodson. That's something to be said. So, but for me, as far as an official pick goes, I mean, I'll blindly go Woodson, but I'm not done doing the research. I got to dig a little bit deeper in this fight to get a little bit more confidence, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, this matchup got announced like an hour before we went live. So, but Dennis Buzukja, I remember him from both of his Contender Series fights. I mean, fought Melsick the first time, lost, and then fought some random dude and, kind of grinded him out a little bit, stuffed a lot of takedowns and just kind of edged out. It was on the B. Joe Pyfer night where like everybody bored Dana out. It was the night they brought Lorenzo Fertitta in to like Dana was like, dude, like you gotta come see these fights on a Tuesday night. So Lorenzo comes through, and it was an absolute stinker minus Joe Pyfer. So they didn't give anyone a contract except Joe. But I mean, Dennis, he was just solid. I mean, like I said, nothing special but solid, right? And then Woodson, like I said, the physical attributes make him a stylistic matchup. Make him a stylistic problem, a matchup problem for a lot of people. Excuse me. It's just. I don't want to say, I don't know, like that fight against Saldana, but Saldana is good for like a round and a half, right? So he's a dangerous guy in every single fight, win or lose in those first 7 minutes. So I'm not sure how much stock to put in that. I guess where I'm more worried about is Dennis mixing in some wrestling here, because that's one thing that Woodson, he has gotten better, and he does have those long man chokes like you mentioned, but it's still going to take a lot more reps and, mat time to catch up. So that's where Buzukja has a chance. I don't know what shape he's in taking this on a couple-day notice, so I'll go Sean Woodson. But who knows? I mean, if you're tempted by that big dog price and you feel like this guy has a clear path to victory, I could see why someone would make the argument for him, but I'll go with Woodson. But man, I love the original matchup. Not the original. The original was Steve Garcia, but the replacement, not Butler, but this kid Myron Santos that they brought in from LFA. Dude, that was going to be a banger. So I hope they give that kid another chance. But for now, I'll go Woodson. And last but not least, in the flyweight division, we got Ode Osbourne. He's 12-5. He's welcoming Asu Almabayev, who's 17-2 to the UFC. And currently they got it. Almabayev minus 195. The comeback on Ode Osbourne is plus 170. I might just keep it 100 with you, man. I wasn't that impressed with Almabayev at all. I feel like sometimes, and I want to say this as respectfully as possible, the Kazakh fighters are kind of viewed as Russian fighters. Like when you see a Kazakh fighter with a 17-2 record come in here, he's got the dead animal on his head, you automatically think, oh, this guy's a lock to win the fight. But you saw a couple weeks ago with that Tyson Nam fight, and I'll be honest with you there too. On the regional tape, that guy that fought Tyson Nam, I was way more impressed with him than I was with this guy. Like this guy, Almabayev. So when I looked at his record first, I was like, okay, he's been in there with 3 UFC vets: Tagir Ulanbekov, Chris Kalikas, Zach Makovsky. So all right, let me see how you did against those 3 UFC vets. Tagir Ulanbekov mopped the floor with him in a way where I was like, oh my God, this guy doesn't belong. But that was a long time ago. So, he's gotten a lot better since then. Chris Kalikas fight, very, very underwhelming, man. And Chris Kalikas is 42 years old, Nick. And then the fight against Zach Makovsky, which was a fight or 2 ago. Like, look, Zach Makovsky did his thing in the UFC back in the day, but Zach Makovsky's 40 years old, Nick, and this fight was a split decision where, like, Almabayev is taking down Zach Makovsky. Zach's, like, sweeping him. Zach's hitting takedowns of his own. So, like, what Almabayev brings to the table is he's not Russian, but he's got like a watered down Russian coast style, right? Not much volume, not much activity, but occasionally he's going to throw a spin. Occasionally he's going to throw a jab. Occasionally he's going to pick you up and slam you, right? So like the areas I'm worried about is him getting those opportunistic takedowns late in the rounds, because Ode Osbourne loves to play off his back, and that's something I'm worried about. But man, on the feet, I think Ode, despite his chin, and I don't even know if it's his chin, it's just the guy's huge and he cuts to 25s. That probably takes away a bit of his durability. But like offensively speaking, the guy's the goods on the feet, man. I think that Ode is very dangerous. He's a lot more active. I think he's getting, he's rounding out his game a little bit more. You saw some takedowns landed that last fight. It's just I'm worried about him off his back. But I'm gonna tell you this right now. This dude Almabayev, that this ain't no shaft cat or anything like that, man. Like, I think that this is just maybe a Zalgas 2.0. Like, I don't see this panning out long term. And maybe I'm wrong, but I was very underwhelmed when I watched the tape. So I'm gonna go Ode Osbourne here for the upset.
All right, I like it. I can respect it. Ode's a hard out, man, with that length and that style. Like, because again, he's dynamite pretty much everywhere too. Like Ode has, those kicks, with his arms. I mean, that reach that he has over his opponents. So he's dangerous on the feet, and he's dangerous. Even you put him on his back, like you mentioned, that is one problem that he does have. But he could threaten you with submissions too. He's got those long limbs, and he knows how to use those triangles. So there's a lot to like about Ode, and he is getting better. He's getting more confident, and the work that he's getting in here in Vegas, like there's all sorts of upside to him. I think he's kind of getting over that hump. But Almabayev, I was more impressed than you were, honestly, with the film. I understand, some levels of competition and whatnot, and I do agree with you. I mean, he's fighting some aging UFC vets. But that being said, I still think he's going to be quicker, a little bit faster here. He is explosive, and I think he can mix in those takedowns a little bit. And combine that with Ode, with his defensive flaws. Again, he's a little bit chinny at times. I think the explosiveness will kind of hurt him in this spot. Or the way that Almabayev, I'm butchering his name too, Almabayev ends up getting your back at times. He's opportunistic with that. I mean, I know he gets reversed at times too, but I think he'll be in a good spot. He'll control more of the grappling here if he's on top. So I think he's going to be a little bit quicker. I think he might be able to spark Ode, and I think he can get the takedowns and maybe control a little bit of that. So I do think he's going to win this fight. A close fight, possibly by finish, or if it's a scorecards, he's going to kind of grind it out. And it is notable to say that there's a lot of sharp action coming in his way as well. So they do believe this line has climbed from like 150s, 160s. Now it's approaching, if I'm looking over here, closer to 200s. It's getting up to minus 200. So again, there's a certain point where you kind of jump off. But I believe he is, I like what I see, and I think he fits the bill, and I think he's only going to get better. So this is a big test for him, though. Coming into the UFC again, facing a guy like Ode, I like it, because if he gets by Ode, I think it's a good test, and he's on his way again. So we'll see what he does in fight two. But I think he can win this fight. And so I'm going to pick him. I'll go with the chalk favorite here. Again, it's kind of climbing a little bit, but I do like what I see. There's more upside, I think, to him. Ode's the kind of guy, like I said, he's improving, but I think he's almost reached that plateau, or he's close to it, where on the other side of it, I don't think that's the case.
Regarding the sharp action, I mean, are they really high on this guy per se, or do they just kind of see a Russian sounding name and just because like if his name was Asu Johnson, would he be steamed to minus 200 here?
Possibly. No, it's not about the name. It's not about, like, you know what I mean? That's not exactly like the sharp action that's come in here for sure. There's more to it. There's a lot of people that do run analytic models, even if it's outside of the UFC. There's a lot of people that obviously do footage and whatnot too as well. So no, I don't think it was just blindly betting this line up because you're fading Osbourne or name recognition or anything like that. It was true sharp action to believe that this is the right side.
Okay.
Is what I think, at least. We'll see.
Because when you see an Ev or an Ov, it's like, oh, you see the dead animal on his head. He's got the Kazakh flag. Oh, yeah, this guy's easy money. But you saw in that Tyson Nam fight, and I thought that
way closer to people.
And when I watched the film on that kid, I was like, yo, this kid's a fucking problem. And that shit was close. No, that's neither here nor there. These are two different fights. But I'm just saying, I watched this guy barely beating 42-year-olds, and I'm like, I don't know, man. But man, with Ode's flaws, that's what makes it tough. So
that's exactly it. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that they're probably betting against early on too, a little bit, I mean, there's a certain price point where, willing to take that risk if everything else is lining up and you have more of a durable fighter on one end, and you're laying kind of a short price. I think it makes sense, honestly, but we'll see. Again, a good test. And if he passes this test, man, he's a welcome addition and a nice addition to the UFC, because Ode is going to be around for a little bit, man. I mean, he's a tough out for a lot of fighters. So I think he's going to have one of those careers where he's close to a 500 type of fighter when it's all said and done. No disrespect intended, because if you're a 500 fighter in the UFC, you're a damn good fighter. So
that's pretty fucking good. That means you're sticking around.
Yep.
So someone had a question for you. Dix Insider said, Dan, please ask Nick what sport those trophies are for, and he's willing to bet $20 they're bowling and you're a Nevada state champ.
Correct. No, that is not correct, actually. Those from actually there's kind of my favorite trophies that I used to have a karate background, a sport karate background. So those were from my sport karate days. Good question, though, as well. And I just kind of, I had to have a little bit of that with me still. I haven't done sport karate, obviously, for a long, long time, but that's kind of my striking background is where, what gave me the love for mixed martial arts and the martial arts in general. So that's what it's from sport karate tournaments. And one of my biggest accomplishments, the Diamond Nationals in 1998, that's a huge tournament, and I won the middleweight championship. So that's my kind of pride and joy right back there as well. But so it wasn't bowling, unfortunately. So you're wrong there, but it was a long, long time ago.
So we're dealing with karate black belt Nick Kalikas, huh?
Yeah, that was okay. If we had our karate school, there's a lot of proud moments back in my past. Like, that's kind of like what led me to the spot where I am, which I would have never guessed. Meaning, like, you would never think a karate taekwondo background turns into sport karate, whatever the case may be, and then years later, you're talking gambling odds or betting on fights and all that stuff. Never would have saw that coming, but hey, it is what it is. Life takes you in crazy different ways.
Well, I recommend jiu-jitsu. If they call it the gentle art, it's not so gentle. That's total bullshit. But let's just run with that to sell you on it.
No, if I had a choice to do it again, I might go the jiu-jitsu route instead, man. Because I tell you what, I was one of those stubborn guys way back in the day. Again, all you jiu-jitsu practitioners out there, no disrespect, but when you were dating back, I mean, I was watching UFC 1 for crying out loud, right? Hoist and all those guys. And even back then, I was like, man, those guys, these grapplers don't got nothing. I mean, Hoist started opening up our eyes for sure, because they were like, oh my God. But, jiu-jitsu started getting popular. I was still one of those stubborn taekwondo guys thinking, yeah, right, I'll pick this guy apart, whatever the case may be. Now that's not the case. Obviously, with the wrestling, what I mean? We've evolved quite a bit. And if I had to, pick my spots, I probably would consider getting into jiu-jitsu even more so than taekwondo, because obviously it's such an important part of the game. Everything is, man. I love every aspect of martial arts, but obviously the best bases we know now, you got to start with the wrestling, right? If you're going to pick, I know we're getting off topic a little bit here, but so there, a lot has changed. What I'm trying to say is, back then when I was kind of that guy thinking that, stand up was the way to go only. Yeah. I've got a rude awakening as far as just seeing the evolution of the sport and what it is today. So it's just awesome to see it.
No questions asked. Well, Nick, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me right here, right now on Half the Battle. The fans can follow you at Fight Odds. They can check you out on UFC Fight Pass, UFC On the Line, The Gambler's Perspective. Nick, any message for the fans before we get out of here?
No, I appreciate you guys all watching. And again, support us on The Gambler's Perspective. We have a show coming out tomorrow night, actually, Wednesday night. So make sure you check that out. And of course, UFC On the Line with Yanni the Greek, myself as well. We got another one actually next week, not this week, but the following week we have UFC On the Line coming out. And of course, check out MMAoddsbreaker.com and follow me on Twitter.
Absolutely. Make sure y'all do that for all the fans. Thank you all so much for all your support, whether you've been down with me since day one, somewhere along the way, or recently. Thank you very, very much. Please smash the like button. Hit the subscribe button. When this is over, leave me a comment. Make sure you follow Nick at Fight Odds. Y'all can follow me at Best Fight Picks, and subscribe to Half the Battle everywhere podcasts are found. Thank you guys so much. Enjoy the fights, and until the next time, let's cash these bets.